This is Google's brand new Pixel 9a, and I've been using it for a couple of weeks now, and what it proves is that you actually don't need a $1,000 flagship to get everything you need from a phone. First off, this is probably the best mid-range phone that most people can buy. And of course, there are a few compromises here and there, but for the most part, this is probably the best A-series phone that I've used. And let me start with one of the biggest upgrades this year, because Google have given the Pixel 9a the biggest battery in any Pixel ever. And this one has a 5,100 milliamp hour battery, and that's even bigger than the battery that you can get on the Pixel 9 Pro XL. Now, Google advertised that this can get up to 30 hours on a full charge. And while I don't think I've ever quite got to those 30 hours, what it did do though is remove any battery anxiety that I had, and the thought of having to charge this when I was out and about just completely disappeared. Using the camera, using Spotify, using Google Maps, it handled it all with the battery. And this is on like long periods throughout the day as well. And even when I actually forgot to charge this wirelessly, I just didn't put it on the charger correctly, it still got me to lunchtime the next day on that same charge. So battery wise, I'm actually really impressed with this. Now I've spoken about charging, I might as well talk about charging speeds here, because if you were to wirelessly charge this, you only get 7.5 watts, and it probably isn't your best friend, but it has taken a nice upgrade to 23 watts wired charging over last year's 18 watts on the Pixel 8a. Now let's talk about the Tensor G4 that Google have put into this, because they say it is the same as the Tensor G4 in the Pixel 9 Pros and the regular Pixel 9s, but there is some slight differences. It's got a slightly downgraded modem, so no satellite SOS for example, but the bigger change on paper is 8 gigs of RAM rather than 12 gigs of RAM. But the reason I said on paper is because actually when you're using this day to day, you really just don't notice the downgrade in RAM. Now if you just go off benchmarks, it's easy to see that this stacks up against the other mid-ranges, and it gives you the numbers that you would expect, and it doesn't perform great just looking at those pure numbers. But as always is the case here, benchmarks don't really tell you the full story, because day to day, as I said, this honestly performs as well to me as the Pixel 9 Pro XL. All those AI tasks that you expect the Pixel to handle with ease, it does on the 9a. And circle to search to translate stuff while I'm here in China has come in more handy than I can even explain to you. Gemini Live works as good on the 9a as it does on the regular Pixel 9s. And if you're a big fan of things like Pixel Studio, it works just fine on the Pixel 9a. Now I want to talk about the design on the Pixel 9a, because initially when I first saw this, I just thought this really doesn't look good. The camera bar is gone, there's no camera housing, it sits flush with the phone. I didn't like it. But after using it for the past couple of weeks, I think Google have done such a good job here. But anything negative that I said about the Pixel 9a, I am sorry, I take it back, because this minimalist design of that camera housing, or lack of camera housing, has left me wanting no camera housing on any phone that I ever use now. Google have given the A-series a new, fresh identity with that water droplet flush camera design. And honestly, I really like it. It stands out amongst the rest of the 9 series. Even in the hand, this does feel like a regular Pixel 9. And even though they've replaced the glass back with a plastic matte finish and you have aluminum side rails, I still think that this is a fantastic little design. I really love it. The display is 6.3 inches and it's covered with Gorilla Glass 3 rather than the Gorilla Glass Victus that covers the rest of the Pixel 9s. But having a display that goes up to 120 Hz kind of makes you forget that this is a mid-range phone, because there are still some mid-range phones that still only have 60 Hz. Now, I don't really have any complaints about the display and how it performs. It looks great, it's sharp, it's smooth, and watching content on here is actually as good as it is on any other Pixel 9. You even have that jump in brightness now to 2700 nits on the Pixel 9a, and granted when I'm at home in the UK, I never really need a big bright display, but here in China, it's actually sunny. It's reminding me what the sun is, and having a display that I can see outside is perfect. Now, before I get to how the camera performs, I do have a few complaints, but then I remember this is a phone under $500. The bezels are huge, and you get an instant reminder from Google that this is an A-series phone. Granted, you don't really notice them as soon as you start using the phone, but aesthetically, the great minimalist design is slightly tainted here. Now, the only other complaint that I have is about the fingerprint reader, and it's not really a huge complaint because the phone is only $500, but it's an optical fingerprint reader, so that makes it a little bit different to the ultrasonic fingerprint reader that is in the Pixel 9 and Pixel 9 Pros, and it's not bad by any means, it's just a little bit slow and maybe slightly annoying because of the bright light as well. But I know that most people buying this phone won't have had an ultrasonic fingerprint reader before, so it's not really a huge issue. One place that I don't really have too many many complaints about though is the cameras on the Pixel 9a. Even if Google did downgrade them from 64 megapixels on the 8a from last year, this still does a terrific job. I feel like no matter what camera Google give us, the cameras are always going to take good photos, and it's just the same on the Pixel 9a. The main camera does a good job in daylight situations, and it can grab some really nice details on the shots you take, and there really isn't too much to complain about when it comes to things like dynamic range. All the photos just look really natural, and they show off exactly what was being portrayed in real life, and I love that. And I genuinely think that it can be hard to tell the photos apart on the Pixel 9a compared to the expensive Google flagships. Even in low light situations, there really isn't a lot of noise in the shadows, and the photos still show a good amount of detail, but the camera definitely performs best when there is a nice bit of sunlight. And to be honest, that's the same situation for the 30 megapixel ultra wide as well. While in good light situations, the ultra wide can give you some decent photos. They're not amazing, but it does a good job. And again, when you're in low light, it does struggle just a little bit, but I just don't think for the price you can have too many complaints with the photos that you're going to get from this. One of my favorite parts of the cameras this year is that now that you can use the main camera lens for your macro shots. Now this is a little bit different to most cameras, because when you are taking macro shots on a lot of budget range phones, you use the ultra wide, but Google have moved this now to that main camera, and you get some nice detail here. And granted, you're not going to get the fine X8 ultra macro, but you can get some nice photos if you want to get nice and close to a subject. Now this makes a change to talk to you about the cameras in somewhere that's actually quite nice. So I'm in China recording this at the moment, and when it comes to video, you can do 4K at 60 and 30 frames a second, and I'm using the ultra wide to record this at the moment, and you can tell that the stabilization on this is actually quite good, and that gets even better when you move over to that main lens. So I'm actually pretty impressed with the video on this. Now of course it's not the same as it is on the Pixel 9 Pro or 9 Pro XL, but is slightly better, and this also gives you a chance to see what the mics sound like on the Pixel 9a, and I think actually it's doing a pretty good job. I've got to say, Google have done a really good job with the Pixel 9a, and it's left me thinking that I could actually ditch my Pixel 9 Pro XL and easily live with the Pixel 9a. There's a couple of things that I would miss, like the 5x telephoto and maybe the ultrasonic fingerprint reader. But for the most part, and for most people, this does absolutely everything that you need. Google keeping this at $499 was absolutely the right choice. And remember, you still get Google's 7 years of updates here as well. Listen, it's not the most powerful phone that you'll pick up, and it might be a better deal for you to go and see what you can get from last year's flagships from Samsung or even Google themselves. But as a brand new mid-range phone, I really don't think you can get anything better than this. And just before we finish, I just want to go back to that design very quickly. This is probably my favorite design phone that I've seen in a while. Google have done a really good job here. I love it. Let me know if you're going to pick up a Pixel 9a, and let me know what you think of it down in the comments below. Before you head off, why not subscribe to the Android Authority YouTube channel? And if you do that, then I'll see you in the next video.